Hello, my name is Angela Coulter. I am the originator of Trinity Energy Progression. If you've come across this video or this website or both, it is perfect. It is the time for you to either experience it, to try it out, learn it, practice it, or simply get a consideration that's a wider, different perspective than you might have previously had. That will somehow fill out your journey to help you along on your way. The practice came into me in 2011, and my understanding was it was to lay the groundwork to help others truly accelerate in the shifting that's been going on this whole decade, to be able to allow it and flow. We are changing so exponentially quickly, and it's getting faster and faster as we go, and it's a way for us to truly be able to instantaneously change, whether it is truly stepping into full divine remembrance, healing anything that exists, because it's all part of the illusion, truly mastering your intuitive abilities, getting to a place of knowing, getting to a place of shifting in an effortless, flowing way. Because, it's funny, I don't use the term healing very much anymore, because really healing is simply all we're doing is recreating in the moment. So part of this practice has to do with us remembering, number one, that the divine consciousness is within us as much as we are a part of it. It's like a fractal, if you know what those are, where the whole universe is within us as we are simultaneously within the whole universe. And many of the practices that are out there today, well, actually, pretty much almost all of them that are out there, talk about accessing divine consciousness. So, whether you want to call that source energy, God, spirit, the oneness, the universe, the dualverse. Well, actually, I don't even know the dualverse. I would say the universe, because that's over everything. That I call it the divine consciousness, so that we can, but anyhow, is to access it from within us. A lot of the other practices talk about you have to access all of that through attunement, through bringing in the energy, through accessing the energy from outside of us. And what Trinity does is it teaches us to remember, actually it really helps us to remember that all of it's inside of us. Makes it far more powerful, far more instantaneous, and far more limitless. Because then we're free of limitations, we're free of having to do all these rituals and accessing it in a certain way, through a certain channel or whatever. And in doing this and accessing this and learning it and practicing it, you can do anything. Anything. You can access anything. So it came to me in 2011 through my connection with Yeshua, who some people call Jesus, an Archangel Ezekiel primarily, with others of the Divine Mother consciousness. And it had to do with starting from the center. It was sort of starting from the middle, right? And the middle being what was it within us. And part of it was to say, okay, first and foremost, it's time for us to all remember the completion of the energies of the divine feminine, the divine masculine, the divine creation within us. And that we have all of those in completion. We've simply partitioned them off, and it's time to take them out to remember that completion within us. That we don't need anything outside of us. That it's simply all within. So that was the first step. And then from there it sort of backed up, and then it got bigger, the understandings. And really it got to this point of understanding that duality was the whole journey that we decided as the whole of oneness, divine consciousness, to see what it would look like from the outside looking in, or the perception of looking back on ourselves, to see ourselves and see ourselves in our full infinite amazingness or whatever. And so we created these partitions, what I call partitions. And how I come to call them partitions is sort of like, because I always think of a magician when you go to a magician's show, and on the stage, the assistant comes and gets into one of those boxes, right? And then the magician puts these slats in between parts of the box, and breaks it up into pieces and pulls the pieces apart and says, "Oh my gosh, look, the assistant's in all these different pieces." And we know it's an illusion, except we forget because we're so amazed by it. And then we pull it back together and we pull out the slats, and then the assistant gets out. And look, the assistant's in all one piece. That's exactly my understanding of how we have created this whole universe. Or the dual verse, actually, because the duality verse, universe, or whatever. So the whole practice of Trinity has to do with removing all of these partitions that cause us to believe there are things outside of us, that the divine is outside of us. That has been part of the lesson and the journey of disempowerment, what I call disempowerment, that things could be outside of us, that there could be a not divine. And we've forgotten, and that was part of the game, and now it's time to move on to either, I guess, the game up or the next game, however you want to look at it. So what happens is, part of the process of learning this is going through an intense period of dissolving these partitions, having a conscious remembrance of what they are so that we can notice them and shift them. And, by the way, know the difference between the ego and the higher self. Be very clear on it, even the very finer points that many times we have just sort of overlooked or missed. And then we would... and then we actually just get a purer and purer conscious connection within ourselves to that divine, as the divine consciousness. And the more we do that, the bigger that gets, the more pure and powerful it becomes in its pure state of unconditional love. And the more power that becomes, the faster the acceleration of the change and shifting happens for you, right? So eventually what happens is you don't need any tool to get out there. So tools are all these practices, including Trinity, because it's a method of doing this. But again, the end goal of Trinity is to not have to use any tools. Tools are great, crystals, herbs, even pharmaceutical medicine, things like Reiki, and accessing certain frequencies. So how I explain it often in class is the divine consciousness is the full spectrum, right? Accessing through practices or channels like that we're tuning into, things like arcing light, through Reiki, healing touch, and a number of other ones, are through specific frequencies that allow access into the divine consciousness that we believe we have to limit ourselves to accessing through in the way we learn it. So what this is going straight into the full spectrum, in the full spectrum of the divine consciousness, saying, you can absolutely combine this with other practices, because you just say, okay, from within the full spectrum, within me, I say, okay, I'm going to access this particular frequency. Eventually you just let go of it and just know that it's going to be pure and highest consciousness, and we step out of the separation between us and become the oneness again and recreate from now. So a thing that's really different, that's the one thing that's very different from other practices. Another thing that's really different is, first of all, when I talk about partitions, it's everything based in duality, right? So my understanding is this. The ego, not a villain, like many people understand, the villain or tout in the spiritual world, but the ego was just created for the purpose of exploring individuality and separation. So all of the energies and emotions of the ego are those partitions of duality. So that would include individualization. That would include emotions like fear, anxiety, regret, resentment, anger, guilt, doubt, sorrow, pain, shame, judgment, all separation duality based. So from the standard mindset, we would think that's how we heal things, because all of our dis-ease comes from separation-based energies and emotions in our physical body, in our environment, in our experience, and it's all resistance is another one. So when we allow the flow of the oneness, right, because then we're doing this in a wholeness, it's all flow, then we create in an infinitely free and limitless manner. And that's what Trinity teaches you how to do. So we let go of the idea of healing. So the first step is to get the grasp of this, and then it's to get to the next part that's very different about Trinity, is we let go completely of the idea of healing. There's nothing to heal. All of this duality and separation is an illusion, like the assistant on the stage with the magician, when they're pulled apart into the pieces, and then we're like, wow, and we're entertained and we love it, and then they come back together and pull out. So we're in the process of putting ourselves all, we're pulling out all the partitions to say, oh, wait a second, we were never anything but the divine to begin with. So we finished that lesson. It was great. It was fun. Now let's go on to the next one. All right, some people might argue with me as to the funness of it, but at a higher level, I promise you we believe that. Anyhow, the access directly into divine consciousness is done, well, first of all, the next part of why it's so different is because we let go of the idea of healing, of having to heal anything. My understanding that came in earlier this year, we used to, Trinity, but the interesting is early this year from when I'm doing this video, which would be 2015, my understanding came in of nope, no more healing. Healing is holding on to the past and bringing it forward with you. So whenever we are healing, right, or create something in our bodies, in our lives or experience, we're bringing it forward with us from the past into actual existence, and we're creating it again and again and again, and we're creating it in the now. And so what the difference here is, we create in the now the optimal existence and experience for ourselves, letting go of the need of healing, and it shifts us so dramatically and so instantaneously. It's amazing how quickly it happens. And you can go on the website on trinityenergyprogression.com, which is most likely where you found this video, but if you didn't, that's the website. And you can go to the testimonials page and look at a lot of the testimonials. I mean, it is a full life shift and transformation. And it doesn't matter whether you just started like a week ago on your, what I call the active spiritual journey, or whether you have been doing this for decades. It actually frees us from limitations, because what happens with a lot of these traditional practices, they've been around for thousands of years. People say, well, if it's been around for thousands of years, it can't be ineffective. It's not. All practices like this are expansive to a certain point. If there are rituals and rules and requirements of how you access a certain energy, of how you access any intuitive or psychic ability, that is a limitation, and that is built in separation. This practice is completely built in the limitlessness of divine consciousness, and all you're given is the basis for how to access it consciously. You're giving the practice of getting into your self-development, self-focus, self-expansion, and then the basis of how to actively or consciously access it, and then given the reins to say, go and play and remember. And we have an entire community built. This is another great thing, is my guidance had been to build an entire community of like-hearted individuals, which is all the practitioners, which we are across the United States, into Canada, and hopefully soon across the world. So we are, and it's all coming home to family, because we all agreed to come home together in this way, to have fun with it, to free ourselves of all these limitations, and try that out in the 3 days we're finishing it up as it has been. So we enjoy each other. And so many who come to me say, oh my gosh, I've seen you on videos, I've seen your websites, and you feel so familiar to me. And I say, of course, because we're all family. I'm just the project manager, and we decided to all come back together to do this. We are all the divine, and it takes away segregation. It takes away hierarchy. It comes back to the place of recognition of we are all the divine. We are all the gurus. We are the ascended masters. We are the archangels and angels and star beings, all here at this part of our consciousness, here to play this game, to play the symphony at the apex of the shifting of this existence, which is so exciting and so fun. And so when we get back to the core of this, the understanding is, of course, the easiest way for us to shift is with freedom, with our limitless divine self, and being able to step into our power. And it's really, I don't know if you've ever heard the quote of, it's not that we're afraid of not having any power, but we're afraid of the power that we do have. And so this is teaching us that it is okay, that we're worthy, that we know that we are the divine, that we can remember it, and then we can practice it. And so what happens is there's no ego. And pride and humility, both ego-based words. It simply is. We come to a place of just being, which is part of what we've shifted just recently, the sort of the tagline of Trinity, which is be the change, right? Being is just being. Existing as the divine consciousness in freedom, free of limitations. Because it makes me think of, if you haven't seen this movie, it's a great one to watch. I think it was called Contact with Jodie Foster from years ago. It was all about building this pod to go through a wormhole in space to go to another part of the universe or whatever. And so the blueprints that they got didn't have any kind of chair or safety device that people, in our egoic mind thought we needed, because it's based in fear. And so they put one in, and when she started going through, and it was shaking really bad, and she was like, yeah, this isn't right, and she finally let herself out, and then the chair just totally disconnected and crashed and got accordioned up, and she was floating free, and it was easy. That's what we're doing with Trinity, is floating free and allowing ourselves to go with the flow in a way that we haven't remembered to do before here on the planet. So we have an amazing community of support that speak the same language, see things from a different perspective. We have, it's all about living in unconditional love, living in connectedness, remembering that, transcending judgment and coming back to a place of unconditional love for ourselves and for those around us. And it sounds really simple, and it is, and it, because of its simplicity, is why it's so powerful. So that's all I'm going to talk about right now. Explore the site. It's got so much connected to, it's accepting, incorporating the darkness, the Lemurian, the Atlantean experiences, as well as many other periods of time, all facets of ourselves, all lifetimes, all timelines. With this practice, you can absolutely access your intuition, you can do medium work, you can channel, because it's all part of the same thing. You can decide to focus in any area that sort of tickles your fancy, or you can just accept it as the whole thing and really, really, really optimize this amazing time for yourself that we're all volunteered to be here to do, and change your entire experience to one of fun and play and laughter, because that's the way I like it. It's so much easier that way. So read on. Hopefully you could take a class. If there's we are in 2016 starting a class that's just for self-development, self-focus, and then there's a 2.5-day practitioner class where you work on yourself and others and anything else, and then you can become an instructor as well. And we have so much to share with each other, so much coming home energy, so much love, that that alone helps support our shifting in such a great, amazing way. So thank you for coming. If you have any questions, send me an email at Coulter@trinityenergyprogression.com, and I hope to see you in class soon with either me or any of the number of instructors that are out there now. Thank you. Much love to you. Namaste.